This is the YOB ConvoCast, one-on-one conversations with your other brother's authors, community members, supporters, and friends.
What's up, friends, and welcome back to the YOB ConvoCast, conversations with people within your other brothers who make this community tick, who make this thing go round and round and round. My name's Tom. I am the co-founder, editor of YOB, and it's always exciting when we have a new person to introduce to the world. I love introducing people to the world. It's so fun. This person reached out to me recently with a topic in mind, and it's a topic that has been mentioned at least once or twice in our community. So I'm excited to explore with him today, coming to us from the other side of the country to a place that I adore. It's our other brother, Andrew. What's up, Andrew?
Hey, Tom. I'm so glad that I'm here. Finally.
You made it.
It's exciting.
To the YOB virtual studio. One day, maybe you'll be in the physical studio, but you're in the virtual Zoom studio for today, which is just as good.
This is good enough for me. You know, I've made it in the YOB world. So I'm good.
Absolutely. You've been in the YOB world for a good chunk of time now. And so I'm excited that you're here with us today. I'm excited to talk with you, brother.
Yeah. It's been 4 years. I was a pandemic baby. So
awesome. Pandemic baby. We have a lot of those in our community. What was it like back then when you found YOB? Like, tell us a quick little origin story.
It was like the wild, wild west, you know. There's chaos in the streets. There was toilet paper was running out and everyone was just losing it. And I'm like,
That's
you know
right.
what? I need some gay brothers. And so I found YOB.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, you weren't the only one. We got a good following. We had some virtual events that year. And then were you there for I think you were, right? The first retreat we had after COVID. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't after COVID, but after the worst of COVID. Yeah. That was a fun time. There was a lot of COVID babies. You were in good numbers there at that retreat.
That first retreat will always have a special place in my heart.
It will in mine too, honestly. Yeah, it was a fun event. Tell us anything else about yourself that the listening audience should know.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, I'll try and keep this brief then. So I live in San Diego. I'm originally from Ohio. I've been in San Diego for about a year. So shout out to the SoCal boys and the Midwest Yobbers. I'm an Enneagram 2, and I like to think of myself as a stereotypical gay. So I like fashion, art, design, all that stuff.
So you would contrast with Matt. Matt's a plain old gay, but you're a stereotypical.
Yes, a stereotypical
very different
gay.
from that. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I'm also asexual. So I specifically identify as homoromantic asexual, which means I'm romantically attracted to men specifically.
Yeah.
So.
Which is going to enter our conversation today, because I have a similar inclination, a similar identification. So we're going to discuss that in our conversation today. So you mentioned being in San Diego and being with the Cali boys. I visited you guys last year. This was a trip I had been wanting to make for years and years and years and years. And it finally worked out on the way to Alaska. I stopped over with you. I think I talked about this on the podcast with Daniel or Keegan. I don't know. They all run together. It makes me happy though that we're slowly getting all of you guys on the podcast. So spread the word to your Cali boyfriends to come on this podcast and talk to me. But no, I visited y'all and I had such a fun time. Like one of my favorite things was going on this famed beach hike with you guys, because I've seen the pictures and I've heard the stories that you guys, whenever people visit, you take them on this insane beach hike somewhere in San Diego, like on the coast, and you like go down little tunnels and ravines and to get to the bottom. You start out the top on this cliff and then you go on the bottom on the beach. And then you go past, is it Alicia Keys' house? Whose house is it? There's
Alicia Keys, yeah.
I was going to say, I'm going to pick the wrong female pop star. I don't know who it is. But yeah, and then we go past her house and then we're going down there. And so that was a big fun part of my trip that I felt like, okay, I finally can check that off my YOB bucket list that I got to go on this hike with you guys. But then another of my favorite things, which was so random, was you, me, and another YOBer. We went to this like little speakeasy at like late at night. It was like he asked, I think he put it out there, like, how comfortable are you going somewhere different or something very, like vague and mysterious, which tugged on all of my heartstrings. Cause I was like, I'm all for it. I'm all for a unique experience. And so like we dress up, you let me use one of your shirts cause I only had limited clothing with me. And so you let me use one of your fashionable shirts, which I appreciated. And then we went like down this dark alley and past some dumpsters, and there's like a side door on this like nondescript building, and there's no sign out front, and he like knocks on the door a certain number of times. I'm like, what is this place? Where are you taking me? I was getting a little not frightened, but I was getting very curious. Like, I need to know what's happening soon, because this is very out of the ordinary. I don't usually knock on strange doors late at night. But no, we went in. It was just it was a very cozy little bar set up, and we just had some good times there, just enjoying conversation, enjoying a couple drinks. And that was a fun, memorable experience that I got to spend with you two. So I appreciated that. What was your recollection of that night? I'm assuming you'd been there before.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite speakeasies in San Diego. So I'm so glad that we were able to go. I'm really mad that I didn't get a picture of you in my shirt, because I mentioned it to people and they're like, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, whatever. Picture, it didn't happen. I'm like, well, okay, whatever.
Did we not get a picture that night?
We didn't, no, which is
dang.
Such a
missed opportunity.
It is. It really is.
But honestly, would you rather have a picture, or would you rather have it immortalized forever on a podcast? Like, I think that's
a good point. That's a good point.
I mean, I'm confirming that you did indeed lend me your shirt, and I used it, and it was great. I appreciated the gesture.
I appreciate that. Thank you. However, I will say this: you can't listen to a podcast. I mean, technically you can, but you're having a picture. You can look at that picture like 10 years from now. It's like midnight. You're just in your feels. You're looking through old pictures. You're like, oh, I remember when that happened, and you just shed a tear, and it's just a beautiful moment. So,
and shout out to this other yobber if he's listening, because he actually at this past retreat gave me one of his shirts because I liked it so much. It had all these birds on it, which of course were sparrows, whether they're actually biologically sparrows or not, but we called them sparrows. And so he gave me his little sparrow shirt at the retreat, and I still have it and I still wear it. So we're bonded by shirts.
Yes.
The brotherhood of the traveling shirts in this community, at least amongst the three of us. So
yes. And he loves bringing up that story too. So
nice.
You made an impression.
Yeah. Well, next time I visit Andrew and you let me dress up in your clothes again, we can take a picture to prove it. Make it last.
All right.
I would enjoy going back to that speakeasy. That was fun. That was a nice, cozy, like, I'm not a big, like, loud, raucous bar environment person, so that was just so quiet and intimate, and yeah, that was perfect. So I really enjoyed that trip. Yeah. It was good times.
It was,
yeah, a trip that I wanted to make for a while, and so now here we are on a podcast. And Andrew, we're talking about the esteemed Netflix show Heartstopper today.
Yes, a show that's near and dear to my heart.
And not just you, so many in our community. I remember when this show first came out, or when the second season came out, at least, there was a flurry of discussion about it on Discord. Like, I heard about it. I saw people posting about it. I didn't really read too much into it because I didn't want to be spoiled. I figured I would watch it eventually. So I just kind of skipped all the conversation about the show. And then it came up last summer during our Sexuality ConvoCast series. Our dear brother Keegan, shout out to another SoCal boy, he brought up this show in his episode, and he talked about being bisexual and how there was a scene in the show where one of the characters is watching Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates of the Caribbean. I guess you pronounce it that way. Whatever. So he's watching that movie and then wrestling with that attraction for both the male lead and the female lead. And like, what do I do with attraction that's going in multiple directions right now? And it was like the running joke then of the rest of the Sexuality ConvoCast series, because it kept coming up multiple times. I think at least 3 or 4 more times that Pirates of the Caribbean scene would come up, and we would discuss it and laugh about it. And some people would resonate with it. And so I was watching this show. I finally watched it in preparation for this podcast that I'm doing with you. And that I completely forgot that scene was in the first season. And I just was taken back to last summer's series and Keegan's episode and all those conversations. It suddenly made sense to me. I suddenly remembered, oh yeah, that scene that was mentioned. And now I'm watching it and living it out and partaking in this series that so many in our community have enjoyed. So So it feels fulfilling now to be on the other side of it. And I know what happened, and I know what's gone on in these 2 seasons, and we're going to discuss that today.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, let me read the synopsis. So I will say right at the top, like, this is going to be spoiler heavy. So there's no way to talk about this show and just like not talk about what happened in the show. So I will say at the top, if this is a show that interests you after I read the description, which doesn't spoil anything, but after I read the description, if this is a show you might want to check out, maybe like don't listen to this episode. Maybe don't delete the episode, but save it. Watch the show first and then come back and listen to what we're about to say about it. How does that sound?
Yeah, exactly. It's a reward for finishing the show. You get to listen to podcasts.
So in the next 30 seconds, I'll read the description. Then you can pause it, and then you can watch the show, and then you can come back and listen to the rest of the show. All right. So Heartstopper is the story of 2 British teens, Nick Nelson and Charlie Spring, at an all-boys grammar school. Charlie, a high-strung, openly gay overthinker, and Nick, a cheerful, soft-hearted rugby player, one day are made to sit together in class. Their friendship quickly becomes something more for openly gay Charlie, but he initially doesn't believe he has a chance with Nick. But love works in surprising ways, with Nick more interested in Charlie than either of them realized. Heartstopper is about love, friendship, and loyalty. It encompasses all the small stories of Nick and Charlie's lives that together make something larger. And I would add a PS onto that, thinking that when I first started the show, that it was only going to be about these 2 boys. It's actually like, as the show continues, it keeps zooming out, and it focuses on all of their friends. Like, I don't know, Andrew, is this the gayest show you've ever seen? There are so many gay people or LGBT people. Yes. It's like every character, there's only one straight person in this whole show, I think. I think there's only one straight person.
Right. Even the ally turns out to be gay at the end. So,
I'm just like, okay, so there's Charlie and Nick, and then there's a trans girl named Elle and Tao, and then there's Darcy and Tara, who are in a lesbian relationship, and then there's Isaac, who we're going to reserve for the end of our conversation, and our listeners will learn why when we get there.
And there's the 2 teachers. Don't forget about the 2 teachers.
Let's just go right there. When I saw the 2 teachers having these little moments together, I was like, oh my gosh, please. I cannot deal with the teachers also being gay. I need like some, because it was weird. I was like thinking like, what if those were my teachers? Like, I don't want to think about my teachers in a sexual way. Like, I was like, the last thing I want to think about while I'm watching this show are 2 of my teachers who are on a field trip as chaperones, and they have their own hotel room, and God knows what's happening behind those closed doors on the field trip. Like, that's where my mind was going. So yes, even the 2 teachers in the show, they're gay as well. So lots of LGBT to go around, both amongst the youths and the adults in the room as well. I don't know. I was an English major in school, and this read like a Shakespearean play almost, because in Shakespeare, all of the characters, like if it's a comedy, all of the males and females have a partner that they match up with. And that's kind of how this show goes. It's like there's a male or if there's a male, there's a female, or there's 2 females or 2 males, or whatever the combination is. There's a romantic partner for pretty much everybody in this show as it continues. And so it's very Shakespearean in that just like structural setup, which honestly was like predictable. And so it got more interesting towards the end when that necessarily isn't the case for one of the characters. And so yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but what are your thoughts just on these romantic pairings? I wanted to analyze them with you, either the Charlie Nick combination or the Elle Tao or Darcy Tara, or if there's any other things. I took a lot of notes, so I've got a lot of things to draw from but I wanted to hand it over to you first.
Yeah, well, I also have a lot of notes, so we could be here a while. But I think just kind of overarching, I think my favorite thing about the show is like, yes, it focuses on romantic relationships, but it also focuses on the friendships. Like the scene with Charlie and Tao and the locket, I bawled. I was so, it was so good. I guess we can start with Charlie and Nick.
Yeah, let's start with Charlie and Nick, the 2 main characters.
I don't know. I just really appreciate that they're both such supportive boyfriends. And they like complement each other so well. And they kind of like help each other in the areas they need to work on. So like Nick helps with, Charlie with his eating disorder, and he helps him, with Ben. And it's you can tell that they obviously there's they're friends and they're also romantic, so it's a nice balance.
Yeah, something about this show that I appreciated was like so many real life struggles, like because the eating disorder doesn't come into play like after a season and a half. I think if it takes a while for that storyline to develop. And something I also appreciate, which is such like a Gen Z perspective, is the constant social media and the constant texting. Whenever someone's texting somebody and there's the little three bouncing dots, but then words don't come, and there's like this like holding your breath moment, waiting to see what are they going to say. And that's just such a gen, I mean, it's a millennial thing too, or anybody who has a phone now, but it's like they did a good job of like tapping into the social pressures and the angst that comes with these devices now. Also, I was like, all these kids just use Instagram to communicate. They're all on Instagram, and that's all they use. Like, did Mark Zuckerberg pay for this show, or like what is going on with all the kids in this show just using like they don't even text, they all use Instagram messaging and they post on Instagram. Right. It's just like, I was like, okay, I don't know if is that accurate? Are all the kids on Instagram now? Aren't they using Snapchat? I feel like they're using Snapchat, or they're using TikTok, or I don't know what they're using right now. But anyway.
Yeah, Snapchat's old news. I think it's TikTok. I think Instagram's on its way out too. So
yeah, I was like, I don't know what these kids are doing, but no, I mean, they just get into all the real life issues, the coming out anxiety, coming out to yourself. We have characters in the show that are struggling to come out with themselves, and then by extension to their families, to their friends. And I think that is something that like it's really like refreshing to watch something and to see something familiar, because I think I wanted to get your thoughts on this too. Like, cause I get the sense that there are Christians out there, maybe even Christians listening to this show right now, even in our community who are curious about this topic and this exploration that we're doing on this show, because like there's gay kisses happening like every 10 minutes in this show. Like it's very, that is like very present in this show. And so that could be distracting for a lot of people. And there's not going to be any judgment from me if it's like not something that's going to be beneficial for somebody out there watching, because you're going to see gay kisses happening pretty frequently. But there is something encouraging and there's something refreshing to see characters going through things that you've gone through, that I've gone through, and to like feel a sense of reassurance, like, oh, okay, me too. Like I understand that anxiety of coming to grips with your sexuality, or telling your mom, or telling your dad, or telling your best friend, or your friend group. And it's stuff like that consistently happens throughout the show that keeps me invested, despite whatever disconnect there might be on the romantic side of things, or the faith journey that I'm leading. How did you relate with this show from that moral standpoint or a spiritual standpoint?
Yeah, I agree. I think specifically like Tara and Darcy's relationship, there was one of the subplots was like how exhausting it is to be out and to be that vulnerable with everybody. And I really related to that, because it's like, oh, it's so often glamorized, like, oh yeah, once you come out, like everything's great, and they don't actually deal with the after effects, like, oh, now you have to explain to people, now you have to like deal with the weird comments, now you have to, so I really appreciated that they kind of took that aspect of it too. But yeah, as far as like just show in general, like there was a wide variety of reactions to people coming out. There was a wide variety of ways that people came out, and so I thought it was just really good, the variety. Like you can find representation in any of those, so I thought it was good.
One of the things I love about the show are the little animations that happen throughout the show, because I guess this book was like a graphic novel, I guess. Do you know the backstory on how this show came to be? It was like graphic novels, I guess, before Netflix snatched it up.
It was graphic novels. Yeah, and then they decided to turn it into a Netflix show. That's about all I know.
Well, I'm assuming it's a connection to graphic novels, because there's all these little animations that happen throughout the show, especially when the characters are connecting. And one of my favorites are like, there's like multiple, it happened at least 5 or 6 times, maybe more than that, where like characters are sitting next to each other and their hands are next to each other and their fingers are like grazing each other. And you see these little, lightning bolts, or you hear the little sizzling, like a little spark sound that happens whenever people's fingertips are grazing and they're sitting close to each other. And I just thought that's a nice little touch, because you're getting inside these people's hearts. It's like it's an extra little effect there that I appreciated.
Yes, And I love the little heart crushes, the crush hearts that kind of just pop. Like I love those. They're just so cute.
Yeah. I enjoy the animation. It makes it unique to this whole show.
Yeah.
I wanted to get your thoughts on some fashion tips because you're a very fashionable person. You're wearing a great shirt right now. I've worn your shirt in the past. You're very well dressed in general. You're one of the most well dressed, if not the well dressed person that comes to our retreats. So shout out to Andrew's fashion sense. So like, yeah, I'm curious if you felt the same way. The whole first season, I'm like, Tao's hair needs to go. This hair.
Yes. I hated it so much.
I was like, I hope season 2 rolls around and they like give him a glow up and they do something. And I was like, praise the Lord. He had a sharp haircut. So for anyone that's watching season 1 and Tao's hair is stressing you out, don't worry. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. But I'm glad I'm not alone. I was worried I was going to talk to you and be like, no, I loved it. I love how it frilled out. It was just very frilly. And like, I don't know. It was not my favorite look.
No, I just had a conversation with my coworkers about male grooming habits and they were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I'm very passionate about that subject.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. What are your thoughts on all the fanny packs in this show? I mean, the kids are wearing fanny packs now. Are you pro fanny pack? Anti fanny pack? Where do you land on the fanny pack?
As someone who lived through the 90s, I am very much anti fanny pack.
As we talked about with Matt, Gen Z is bringing everything back from the 90s. So
Right. And fanny packs are very European, like they're very trendy. Yeah. So from that perspective, I'm like, okay, you know what? You can work it. I just don't make me wear one, you know?
All right. So that's my thought too. Like part of me is resistant to it, but part of me feels like for the vibe that it was setting in Europe, this takes place in Europe. So like it felt a little more forgiving over there versus if this was an American school possibly. And then I don't know if you noticed this or cared about this, but Nick's ties are very short. They don't go like to his belly button and it just bothered. It was like, though his ties need to be like an inch longer or an inch and a half longer. I don't know if you picked up on that or if anyone else out there cares, but that was another fashion sense thing that I needed to vocalize.
It was one of those things that I didn't really notice until like halfway through season 2. And then I was like, oh no, this is going to bother me. And so it bothered me the whole time I've rewatched the show. I'm like, no, I can't stand this.
Very nice. There's also a character I wanted to bring up named Ben. And so at the start of the show, Ben is romantically, physically involved with Charlie. I don't know if they would have used the language of boyfriends. They're kind of like this secret hookup thing that was happening. And Ben throughout the show is someone who's closeted and he's trying to figure out his sexuality. And as the show goes on, there's an opportunity for Charlie to forgive Ben. And there's another bully because he also takes on the role of a bully as the show goes on, as far as him coming to grips with his sexuality and like fake dating a girl and constantly like having eyes on Charlie and Nick and experiencing jealousy, no doubt. And there's another bully who's just this typical straight doofus named, what's his name? Harry, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's his name. So yeah, there's these like two bully figures. And there's an opportunity that he could have been invited to a party that they were having when they went on this field trip to Paris. And Charlie, in both instances, there's an opportunity to extend the olive branch or the branch had been extended to him and he had an opportunity to forgive and welcome in. And he did not do that. And he turned them away. And there was part of me that was like a little, like, I get it. Like, he's learning, he's like standing up for himself. Like that's one part of the message that I don't want to deny. But then there's like the Christian part of me that's like, no, Charlie, you need to forgive. You need to let go of this anger. And maybe that's coming. My hope is that in season 3 or season 4, however long this show goes, that there's like a forgiveness moment where it finally resolves and there's like forgiveness and these kids can like go move on in life. But I felt a little like hurt that the forgiveness wasn't extended to these bully boys.
Yeah, I kind of had that same thought. I was like, oh, it's so satisfying. Like I was so excited when it happened. But you're like, oh, as a Christian, yes, you should be forgiving them. But also Ben needs to get his stuff together because, he's ruining everybody's life. So he had it coming.
I have an unhealthy attraction for this Ben character, but we'll just move on. I find him endearing. I want him to figure himself out and be a shining beacon of a human being, but he's just not there yet. He's in process, but there's grace for the journey, right? Hopefully.
That's right. Exactly.
Hopefully, yeah. That's a little snapshot of some of the characters. Let me see. Anything from your notes from all the other characters, Andrew, before we dive into our final character?
Yes, I did have two things I wanted to say. One, Olivia Colman is the mother that I wish I had. I love her so much in this show.
Nick's mother?
She is Nick's mom, yeah.
Why do you love her so much? Anything in particular?
Because she's just so nice. She's loving, like she's genuinely supportive of Nick. And I don't know, she's a fantastic character. Yeah,
she's like a single mom. The dad is kind of a douchey dad who doesn't see the kids and lives across the channel, I guess over there is what it would be from England to Paris. But yeah, no, she's fantastic as her son comes out by. That was something we didn't talk about, but like it gave me a little glimpse into the window, because I don't know that window of what it's like to be attracted to women, but then also have this attraction to men that's like also simultaneously there. Like it was interesting to see it on play out in a screen, because I don't think I'd ever seen like a bisexual coming out story to my knowledge, at least that clearly articulated as it is in this show. So that was very illuminating. It kind of gave more context to Keegan's and Alex's and some of our other conversations that we had last year about bisexuality.
Yeah, definitely. And then I really liked Elle's character, specifically how she wasn't just a token trans character, but that she actually had other things that she was dealing with and struggling with. So, getting into art school, or, her relationship with Tao, like it really added a lot of dimension to her character. And I feel like that's just, everybody wants that, whether they're how they identify. It's like, oh, I want a character who's not just like the ace character who is very two-dimensional and their whole struggle is just being this or whatever. So it was nice that they had some nuance with her. It's nice that we've reached a point where shows and movies are more focused on queer joy, because it's like, I feel like movies from the last decade were very much like, oh, it's so horrible being, a sexual minority or gender minority, and like it's just depressing. And so now it's like, oh, there's actually some happiness here. So I did appreciate
that's true. And there's also a lot of struggle to go around with all the gay boys in this story. And so like it's kind of nice when you have this character who's thriving and doing well as an art student and everything. Yeah. I also love that there's a female character in the show named Imogen. Can you even? Imogen? What is that?
As somebody who's one of my favorite musical artists is Imogen Heap, I am very excited.
The first time I saw her name, I was like, wait, her name is not Imogen. That cannot be real. Is that a real name? Or do people name their children Imogen? But the main character, Andrew, to close our time together, I wanted to focus on was Isaac, who I didn't know anything about this show. I didn't know anything about these characters. And so the whole first season comes and goes. And there's just this other guy that's there in the friend group. And like, he's always just reading a book. He's just kind of the extra character who needs to say something, because there can only be so many people in the room. And so like, I was wondering, like I had a conscious thought. I was like, I wonder what's up with that guy, or what's his story? Are they going to like devote any time to him, or is he just there as like a wallflower, who's just there? And then as season 2 develops and unfolds, you start to see like you clearly see that he's gay and he's attracted to this other boy, and they're like having a little fling together, a little darting eyes with one another. But then there's a moment where the boy kisses him, and the reaction is like very hollow and very confused and very doesn't know what to do with it. And so we then learn towards the end of the season that there's like an art exhibit, and he sees a book on asexuality, and it kind of like we start to see the little animations go off, so we know something's happening there, because he has this affinity for this art project that's focused on asexuality, and this book in the library that's on asexuality. And so we start to learn that this is part of his identity and part of his story. And you mentioned at the top that you identify as asexual, and I am somewhere on that spectrum as well. And so I'm curious, your response to this character and this concept of asexuality in this sexually, romantically supercharged show that is Heartstopper.
Well, I'm just going to say I have very mixed feelings about Isaac. So I do love how he's very anti-drama. He's just like this. There's several points in the season when he's just like, no, we're not dealing with this, and he just shuts it down. And it's, I mean, I love ace representation. That's always cool to see. But it just feels like he, I don't know. So I had two main issues with him, I think. So the first one is that he was kind of like this shy, awkward, bookish type, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like that's can be a common asexual stereotype of like, oh, this virgin who is just kind of shy and weird, and like that's why they're asexual, because they're just like uncomfortable or whatever, and it's like I'd really like to see somebody who's like fun and fashionable and like the life of the party as an ace character,
Right.
So that, I think that was my first issue. And then my second issue was that he was aro ace, so a romantic asexual, which again is fantastic, is phenomenal. But I kind of did some research into like asexual characters in mainstream media, and most of them are either straight heteroromantic or they are aro ace. And I'm like, it would have been nice for him to be a homoromantic asexual, because I don't think we've seen those in mainstream media. So for him to be like, oh yeah, there's this boy, and then that not really go anywhere, it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, I guess I don't get to see myself on screen, kind of a thing. Right. And it made me so sad that he was always relegated to being like the third wheel or the fifth wheel or whatever, I'm just like, no, he needs a friend.
I know. Where I started to connect the dots was like they were having a party in a room, and you could just see him. He was reading a book, and he looked over his shoulder, and there's two people over there, and he looks this way, and there's two people over there, and he's just by himself, and he goes out into the hallway by himself. I was sort of teased by it because you had mentioned something about ace. You called it ace erasure. What do you mean by that when you say ace erasure?
So I don't know if that would necessarily apply to Isaac's character specifically, but I think ace erasure is either like explaining away their asexuality by like, oh, well, they just haven't experienced sex before, and so that's why they're acting like this, or whatever, or kind of using it as a problem to be fixed, or just not even including it, and I also, in my research, I found less than 20 ace characters that were in mainstream media from, the last 20 years. And there were only like a handful that were actually specifically mentioned in canon. Like, oh, this character's ace. Like they say, hey, I'm asexual or whatever. Most of them are like somebody on Twitter or like at a Comic-Con panel was like, oh yeah, I think of them as being asexual, and that's like
Gandalf.
That's a cop-out. Yes.
Like Gandalf or Dumbledore or, the wizard, the gay wizard stereotype.
Right, exactly. Or SpongeBob. It's like, okay.
Right.
That's great, but like,
no, and I feel you, because like, I don't know, I'm curious to see. I'm assuming there's going to be more series, more shows to develop these characters. So I'm curious where they go from there, because I haven't read the books or anything. I don't know if it's drawing directly from the book matter or if it's separate from that storyline. But yeah, I mean, there's something a little, like you said, like it was cool to see a little bit of representation, to be someone on screen that's not as much into the culture around him as far as the hooking up and the constant pairing up with people. Like I cheered for him so much when he like confronted his friends. He was just like, why do I have to like this person back? Why do I have to have somebody like all of you have somebody? Yes. I'm paraphrasing, but so that was cool to see. But then there's like the flip side of that, kind of like you were saying. I was like, oh, but then like, so is he just like attracted to books? Is that like his
right,
his lane
right,
is
yeah.
Like he just has like a stack of books, and that's just, he's always reading. Like, cool. I love reading too, but like, is that what he has to live for in this life, which is just reading, or being the fifth wheel? Like, yeah, is there something more in store for his character? So I don't know. I hope that there is. I hope there's more dimensionality for him, because yeah, it is interesting now that you mention it, to like not see more representation about asexuality or aromanticism in everything, in shows and books, in movies, and to see something of ourselves, because we have a good number in our community that feel similarly. And so it is interesting to bring up in this conversation about this show.
Right. And I feel like, kind of going back to previously what I said to kind of explain it a little bit better, I think the issue that I had with him being aro ace was because when people think about asexuality, they think of someone who's aro ace, like, oh, they're not attracted romantically or sexually to anybody. And which is fine. That's part of the ace spectrum. But it's the problem that I run into all the time is people who are like, okay, so you're asexual, then how are you gay? You know?
Right.
And so there's not a lot of discussion around like romantic attraction or things like that. So I think that was kind of my main source of disappointment. Not that he was aro ace, but that they just kind of went to the default and didn't really, they could have taken it so much further.
Right. I think you and I are very similar. As far as I have never been sexually attracted. I've never had sex. I've never wanted to have sex, but I get the little heart flutters and electric shock animations whenever I'm around certain guys. Like I've experienced that plenty of times. And so I think there absolutely is a romantic component to my sexuality in addition to just being physically or emotionally attracted to men. Like I think there definitely is a romantic component there, just not the sexual component. And so so no, I'm glad we're putting language to this, because there might be people out there who don't have any context for asexuality and they just assume we're all robots, right? Like we have no feelings, or we have no no anything. We're just kind of like circuits and wires and don't have a heart. But I have a big heart, and I know you have a big heart too. And like it would be cool to see more of that reflected in a show like this, because again, it feels like they check all the boxes. There's like someone represented in every category, it feels like, of the LGBT plus acronym. And I'd be curious to see if they do anything more with this character, or if they introduce a new character in the future. I don't know. I'm eager to follow where this show goes from here, though, because like I said at the top, it's just a show that taps into a lot of the just anxiety and a lot of the feelings and unique experiences that we don't see played out, certainly not in Christian mediums, but like just even in general culture, like it's always kind of a breath of fresh air to see something familiar that you resonate with. And even one of the teachers who I was worried would be gay and there would be a gay teacher storyline. He said something to the effect of like, because one of the teachers came out when he was young and then the other one didn't get to come out until his mid-20s, I think he said in the show. And that there was a lot of lost life, like a lot of lost living. And I know that's something that I resonate with, because I didn't go to these parties and I didn't have dates and I didn't have kind of that stereotypical high school experience, at least from a romantic standpoint, with people. And so there's part of me that's like resonating with stuff that I was feeling at the time, but now seeing it on screen, like there's a connection happening. And, you know, I feel those little hearts and those little leaves circling around me as I'm watching this show. Any other closing thoughts on Heartstopper?
Completely off topic, but watching this show made me feel like an adult, because there were moments when I'm like, no, you can't do that. Like when they were running in the Louvre, I'm like, stop, don't run in the museum. Be respectful. Or when Charlie's parents were like, you can't see Nick until you get your homework done. And he was all like, oh, this isn't fair and blah, blah, blah. And me and my friends who were watching, we were like, no, your parents are right. Do your dang homework. Get it done. Your grades are more important than your romantic relationship.
Or like sometimes when there's shows like these, when like, yes, the stars are the kids. Like I don't want to see the parents all the time. Like the kids are the stars of this show. But then there's part of me that's like, you know, that your two same-sex teenagers are dating and you're just letting them go up into their bedroom and close the door or spend the night. Like, I don't know. I'm just a little like, where's the parenting coming into play here? If they're like 15 years old, sometimes I wonder where the parents are when all these things are happening.
They're not like regular parents. They're cool parents.
They're cool parents.
She's a cool mom.
I'm a cool mom. Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't know. I also, despite what I said earlier about there's like tons of kissing in the show, it's also very like there's nothing that feels, to use Christianese, that doesn't feel like a stumbling block. Like there's not like nudity or there's not like sexual scenes even. Like there's a moment where Charlie and Nick are together and there's like this moment, are they going to go further? But then there's this line that's been drawn and they don't want to go too fast. And so there's like a lot of restraint and a lot of maturity actually in this show too. You know, you talk to anybody and you could get a completely 180 different response. Like it's too lascivious or it's too much. But then there's other ones who would be like, honestly, yeah, it taps into a lot of real life issues that I don't know. It's cool to just see it reflected. And so
yeah,
I'm a fan. I will be watching whenever season 3 rolls around and we can follow up on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have a watch party, a YOB watch party.
Yeah. And I'll be able to keep up with the Discord discussion this time and know what's going on because I just felt out of the loop whenever these seasons came out the last couple of years. So thanks for going over this with me, Andrew. It was fun.
Yeah, this was fun. I have more notes. I could have talked for another hour, but you know.
I know. We only have so much time. This maybe the director's cut, extended cut, or we could take a picture of your notes and we can attach it to this episode. Listeners, though, if you're out there listening and you've watched the show, now that you've paused the episode, you watched it's only 16 episodes, 8 episodes a season, so it's very manageable. It's a very manageable watch. If you've seen the show, if you have thoughts on the characters, thoughts on the romances, thoughts on the real life issues, thoughts on asexuality, we would love to hear what you have to say. Just go over to yourotherbrothers.com/podcast, find the ConvoCast episode with Andrew and leave us your thoughts. Leave us your Heartstopper thoughts, which, by the way, I meant to mention at the top, is happening during Love Month at YOB. We're talking about love, all things love related, here in this month of February 2024. And so I was like, honestly, what better timing, Andrew, to have a conversation about a show called Heartstopper than during Love Month? It was ordained to be this way. It worked out
exactly.
So well. Maybe one day I'll visit and we'll just have a roundtable discussion about a topic. That would be fun.
Ooh, that would be so much fun.
Take the microphone down past Alicia Keys' house, down to the beach, and have a picnic podcast. That'd be fun.
That would be so much fun. Just the ocean in the background.
Hear the waves lapping in the background. That would be cool. It would be cool to bring the listeners in on some level of that journey. That would be cool.
Right, an immersive podcast.
Let's table that. Let's potentially pray into that and see what the future brings. All right, brother. Well, so good to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time. And thanks for helping me jump into this show. It was long overdue. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to peer pressure somebody into watching Heartstopper. So thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, hopefully we peer pressured someone out there to give it a shot. And like I said, give us your thoughts, y'all. We'd love to hear it. All right, until we cast our next convo. Bye, friends. See you, Andrew.
Bye.
Something else I took notes on. I was like, why are there like only 2 adult chaperones for like 116-year-olds?
Right?
What is that about?
Right. Just gonna let them loose in Paris, you know. That's normal.
The ratio is severely off. I'm sorry. I don't think the numbers are correct there.